And we're so many positive comments, so many fascinating questions to the previous presentation. Thank you all for making this such a live participation in this virtual conference. Many of you did ask about the possibility of accessing the slides, and the answer is yes, absolutely. They will be posted after the conference on this page, so be sure you keep your accessing information, your registering information, and you will be able to access the slides post-conference. Suzanne.
It is my great privilege to be introducing our next speaker, Amanda Wang. When you visit Amanda's blog, you'll read that she is on a mission. Amanda founded the first in-person, peer-led support group for people with borderline personality disorder, offering much-needed support and solidarity in this community. That group has grown over 900 registered members. Amanda has been advocating and educating the research and clinical communities. They have met with then NIMH Director Dr. Tom Insel, spoken at Yale, Columbia, and the National Alliance for Mental Illness, and written extensively. Amanda received the Fountain House Humanitarian Award in 2017 for all of this advocacy work. Amanda carries an urgent message. Suicide is preventable. Hope is real. It takes all of us. And in people telling their stories, hope and change become possible. Here to inspire, motivate, and galvanize us is Amanda Wang.
Good morning. When I was 9 years old, I visited my aunt in California, and my cousin found an injured hummingbird in his backyard. It had blue and green iridescent feathers, and it could fit in the palm of our little hands. We placed it in a shoebox and gave it water and forsythia flowers for food. We didn't know what we were doing, but every few hours we checked in on it. But after a few days, however, and for reasons we could not figure out, the hummingbird died. We buried it underneath a tree, and we went on with our lives. I have not thought about the hummingbird until last night as I frantically began writing my talk for today. For most of my adult life, I subconsciously thought of myself as that hummingbird, destined to die sooner rather than later, no matter how much help I got. Because of this, I have been filled with many questions surrounding my identity. Here are some. Who am I? Should I continue to exist? Why am I suffering? Why does my suffering make any sense? And because of that, how am I supposed to make meaning out of my suffering? What is my purpose? And finally, can it help me endure all this pain? Unfortunately, I kept all these questions to myself and instead stayed steady on my course. I did what I thought I was supposed to do, whether it came from my parents, from school, from church, or from society at large. I thought that if I did everything right, if I followed the rules, if I was obedient, then life would be good to me. And so I prayed and went to church. I went to school and got married and got a job and went to parties. I pretended I was part of the status quo, normal and happy, always smiling. And as hard as I tried to make those things work, something was terribly wrong. I was dying. I mean, where do I begin? I prayed to God for comfort and understanding or even hope, but heard no answer. I dropped out of art school because of my undiagnosed mental illness and settled in on a dead-end job because of the insurance. The most difficult thing I had to bear was the fact that I loved my husband, but it turns out I'm gay. I tried hard to hide that one for the sake of our marriage, and later for the sake of our family. We have a son. I tried to hide my loneliness, my anxiety, my inability to synthesize who I was with how I wanted to lead my life. And then it began. I started self-harming on a regular basis. Anytime I started to feel conflicted inside or felt my anxiety climb or became too hopeless. And when I abstained from self-harm, it was replaced with urges to kill myself. It came in with full force. There were images and voices and actions popping up in my head of things I'd rather not tell my therapist because I didn't want to worry her. I hated who I was and thought everyone secretly hated me too. I insisted I was unworthy of existing. This was more than an existential crisis. I literally believed I should not exist. And over time, this became my standard reflex, my identity. I was fixated with suicide. I asked, how can I justify my death? When will I finally be brave enough to kill myself? Is today the day I finally do it? These thoughts and questions peppered my mind every day, every hour, on the hour. The urge is so great, it would feel as if I were wrestling an angel, using all my strength, will, and might to fight off suicide. That was my identity for over 15 years of my life. And for all that time, I was still determined to find the why to my existence in order to bear any how, as Nietzsche said so famously. In other words, I needed to know my purpose so I could endure my suffering and will myself away from suicide. But I couldn't find it no matter how hard I tried. And I knew at the rate I was going, I was running out of time. But every once in a while, you catch a break in life and meet someone who changes the trajectory of your story. I've had my fair share of therapists, mentors, and teachers, some better than others, but I knew almost immediately that when I met my new therapist, we would be doing some heavy lifting. 6 years ago, I would walk into a therapist's office on the Upper West Side of New York City and start the same old routine with her as I did with all my other therapists. I would say very little, but Carrie would have none of it. She was enthusiastic, nurturing, and curious. She would ask me about what made me come alive and encourage me to find my meaning. There was something that she gave that I didn't even know I could have. She modeled behavior I always wanted to have inside of me. It was perhaps, yes, another avenue to a better life. Amanda, she said, I'm shaking things up here. You remember those little snow globes that you shook and shook to make the little town get into a flurry? Well, that's what I'm doing here with you. I just want to show you there's another way. You don't have to accept what I'm showing you, but I want you to see that you have a choice. You can stay where you are, or you can see the other way of looking at things, of another way to live your life. You have that option. I don't want you to think that you're stuck with only one way to live and that one way is causing you to lead a life of pain and suffering. I want you to know there are ways out there. Amanda, you are a person who struggles with worthiness, but worthiness is not all that you are. You are much, much more than that. That's Carrie. I don't know how she did it, but she got me feeling again. I would stutter and stammer, and I would say nothing for minutes on end, and sometimes I would not look at her at all. At the end of session, I'd run to the bathroom, crouch in a corner, and cry my eyes out. Despite all this, she got through to me with consistency, irreverence, patience, and dare I say love. I started to open up. And then she would say something that would change the course of my life. Amanda, she says, you have a great desire to connect with people in a real and authentic way, to show others who you really are. You must keep on trying. You have to follow that desire. Otherwise, you'll most likely end up in the hospital again, or worse. And that's when I started to make changes in my life. My relationship with suicide was too dangerous, beyond my control. And every time I landed in the hospital, the means to which I would make an attempt became more and more dangerous. I had to change something, or else it would end me. And so I came out gay and transgender to my family, despite knowing the risk I was taking. I had to be true to one thing, and that was to myself, if not to survive suicide, but to at least set an example for my 2-year-old son. Not only did I survive it, but I have also grown from it. It's been 2 years since I've come out, and it turns out that even though my husband and I are separated, we make a great co-parenting team and are good friends. I actually have an amazing girlfriend, which I didn't think was possible, but came true somehow. And I have a family that supports who I am in ways I can never imagine before. You see, I'm not just a gay, transgender, first generation Filipino American. I'm not only an artist and storyteller and a daughter and a mother. I'm not just a psychiatric patient with 6 hospitalizations diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I am all of these things and none of these things. I am everywhere and nowhere. As Maya Angelou said, you are free. You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high. The reward is great. The price was high. It almost took my life too soon. But lately, I've seen this reward. It's beautiful. It's simple. Living a life as authentic as possible to who I am creates a life well lived. I am happy for the first time in my adult life. Finally, I have realized that I no longer depend on death to give me my life meaning. No longer do I identify with suicide as my saving grace. Instead, it is here, right now, connecting with you that I can live. It is living in the moment with intention and with compassion. It is knowing that I can love and am loved and that I can love myself. And it is there that I discover it's not about worth. It's about conversations and connections and experiences and being and doing. It's about the process of becoming. And that is ultimately how I identify. I am in the process of becoming. Sometimes I can't believe I say it, but it's true. 2 years ago, and a few days after my latest discharge from the hospital, and my most dangerous suicide attempt yet, I met up with Carrie. In the middle of session, she asked me a question. She says, I know this might be strange to ask, but how do you think I would feel if you died by suicide? Maybe angry at me for not communicating, I said, or upset that I didn't give it my best shot. She asked, you don't think I'd be devastated? I said, upset, yes. Devastated, no. She said, even after all those times I've committed to watch you speak, after all those conversations, tears started to well up in my eyes. I began to think of our history together, our relationship. I began to think of all the progress we made together when I revealed to her things I only told myself and how she was there during my struggles. How could she hold so much value in our relationship, I wondered. It was like a well-oiled reflex. A part of me didn't want to accept it. I said, if I believe in our relationship, Carrie, then that would mean I would have to let go of death. She said, maybe if you believed in our relationship, then you wouldn't want death around after all. Amanda, I believe we share something. I believe that we were put here for a reason. I begin to cry. The lie I'm telling myself is that I don't matter. No one cares. I'm not worthy. It's so hard for me to accept this isn't true. For someone so desperate to connect and feel so alone, I fear accepting another person's love for me. But with each session, each conversation, I begin to believe. I begin to believe that I have a story to share, that I can change my narrative. And whether she realizes it or not, she has showed me glimpses of what's possible. I might not have all the answers to my litany of questions about my existence and place in the world, what my identity is, and whether it's a healthy one. And in some ways, I'm okay with that. My identity has evolved, some has stayed, and some has been revealed. All this to say, maybe nothing was ever wrong with my identity after all. Maybe it was just the way I survived until I knew a better way to live. My therapist helped me find that better way to live. She gave me that gift. Thank you, Carrie, for believing in me when I could not believe in myself. You have saved my life many times over. And now, after all the work we've done, now I can finally say I'm living my life. Suffice it to say, I no longer view myself as that broken hummingbird. The urge to kill myself no longer looms large, and I've been working on expressing myself in real time instead of bottling up all my emotions inside. I continue to tell my story, whether it's in session, talking to my son, or in a room full of wonderful people like yourselves. I'm an active participant in my life, breathing, connecting, feeling, and doing. Somehow I'm alive. Somehow something happens when you shake things up and believe there's another way to live. You become. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, Amanda, thank you so much for sharing this. I get tearful as you were speaking. What a story, and just what a sense of a journey, growing to understand who you were and growing to, as you said, love who you are. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this with all of us.
You're welcome.
I have a question for you or two,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
I'm wondering if you can tell me what were some of the first signs for you that you were starting this process of seeing yourself and beginning to love yourself? Were there kind of things you started to notice that you were doing differently?
I think it was really the help of my therapist. She was able to model things for me that I couldn't see myself. She like noticed patterns that I was doing, and she showed me other ways to live out my life. Um, I think it started with my first steps of sharing who I was to someone else that I trusted, and that was the first step.
Wonderful. Sounds like it was a gradual process, but it was those first little steps in session, and then kind of getting bolder and sharing more.
Yes, definitely.
Wonderful.
Can I add one quick thing, Suzanne? Would you
Yeah,
mind?
please.
Amanda, last time you and I were presenting, sharing a stage, not virtual,
Yes,
you had a standing ovation. At the end of your speech, it was the Fountain House
right.
event. There was a standing ovation. This huge room filled with people just stood up as one to applaud you. And I know that if we were all in the same room, the same thing would happen right now.
Thank
So
you. I
thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Amanda, thank you so much. I know that we will have many more questions for you when we rejoin our panel at the end of the day.
Okay.
And we will see you there. Thank you so
Okay.
much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.